Woo-wee, what's going on YouTube? It's Donnie B all day. So recently, that's my my whole intro. So recently, I did a video on knife fighting, right? And there's been a whole lot of wondering the difference between like fighting knives and different things between stiffness and flex and guards and no guards and yada yada yada, right? So what I wanted to do is show you the difference today, the difference between a fighting knife and a combat knife, because there's completely two different things when you're talking about a fighting knife to a combat knife. Now, my combat knife, my issue knife, right now it's downstairs, otherwise I'd bring that up. But this one happens to be right here, was the Gerber LMF Infantry 2. Love it, right? Awesome, awesome, phenomenal, sweet blade. But the combat knife I have near me, because I was just using it, is the Buck Ground combat knife. Now, this is a designated combat knife. It's got MOLLE attachments all over it. Does that mean a combat knife has to have a sheath with MOLLE geared capabilities and the ability to take off this and strap it through all those holes? No, you can have a leather sheath, just plain as you go. There's nothing wrong with that. They've been happening for years. This is just more of a modern style, because back in the NAM era, it was the duty belt, and you'd throw your leather sheath or whatever on a duty belt, and that's how you'd roll. But nowadays, all of our Kevlars and our vests and all that, everything is MOLLE compatible. Like the Kevlars all the way around the top have little MOLLE holes in it, or MOLLE slots like these, right? And our vests are just covered so you can attach gear anywhere you want. It's just everything is made to have attachments, right? And so generally when you're talking about combat, you can see this, it's Velcro. You can take this off, you have just the sheath, and then you can use these holes to lash it to however you want. So there's always going to be multiple options when it comes to a true modern combat knife. There will be some, like I know Tops has some where they just still have a leather sheath, and believe me, I can still go to combat with a leather sheath. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't think that a combat knife has to have this kind of sheath, but generally a fighting knife doesn't usually have to have this kind of sheath. A fighting knife is something that's either going to be a boot or a belt or something coming out from the side or something long from the back, right? So combat knives are that way. Now, fighting knives, there's a couple different styles. Actually, more than a couple. Hold on a second. Almost forgot I had another one sitting there. All right, so combat knives. I did a video on this one the other day. This is the TRS Titan, right? And one of the things about this blade is it's really thin and it flexes. And people thought, well, if you hit something hard, like a bone, you want something that's really stiff and not going to break. The good thing about something like this that flexes is when it hits something hard. Remember, bones inside the body aren't big squares, right? You're not going to have a big block of bone generally. So especially rib cage, or if it's going to go through an arm on a Bigfoot, not a human being, or a femur or something like that, it's a round bone. When something hits a round thing, it's going to hit and want to curl off of it. So with a flexible blade, you see that? It's going to hit and keep going. Where a stiff blade can hit that round bone and stop because there's nowhere for the blade to move. So talking about something like this, when you're going through and you're hitting something solid, boop, it might just turn. If you catch the edge of that bone, it's going to turn, and that flex is going to allow that blade to go in even farther past the bone. So that's something good. So when it comes to a fighting knife, this guy right here is a good fighting knife when it comes to if you're the guy holding the knife, right? When it comes to, okay, now you're going to have a knife battle. That doesn't happen where you're going to be clashing knives. You don't want a thin knife. That's not what this is for, right? This isn't the knife that you want if somebody else has a weapon, put it that way. If somebody pulls out a baseball bat, I'd rather have this to defend myself than nothing, obviously, but this is an offensive type thing. This is your pig sticker right here. And I forgot to mention it's ambidextrous. So then you break out something like this, the D-Bad Preacher. This is a designated fighting knife. You notice there's no guard on the knife, and you're thinking, how can you have a fighting knife with no guard? Simple, make it good. Now a lot of people said, yeah, but what happens if you hit a bone in your hand and you cut off your fingers? I know. I just totally had a brain fart. The Nutty Knife Guy, who was awesome. Check him out. Nutty Knife Guy was worried about that, hitting a bone and your blade's going to keep going. But remember that a body is a movable object, right? It's not like a wall. So if you took something, I don't have anything near me that doesn't have any kind of guard, as long as the grip isn't crazy terrible, as long as you have a decent grip, you thrust through, bodies move, right? It's not going to boom and stop and then you're going to keep going. That's not going to happen. It just absolutely won't. The Nutty Knife Guy uses the War Post, which is a big 4x4, and he hits that son bitch. So he's probably thinking like to hit like the war, but it won't. Bodies are softer. It's just going to cruise right through. But this one, designated fighting knife, you have your 4 stance. Now you'll notice my choil, right? It's not a standard choil. It comes back. Most choils are either going to go forward or they're just going to be, round, right? This one comes back, and the reason is because it's designed for this. So you see how this comes down and up? It's made for the pinky to do that. You see how the pinky naturally flexes around that? So now when almost dropped it on my leg. So now when I hold it, my fighting knife grip, my reverse grip, you see that? So what that does is gives me extra control, and now the knife this way and this way is completely secured, all by that grip. So some people might think, I know Legion Tacticool, my man Grugs. Grugs is awesome. Grugs is doing a series for Stefan Klaus. Boom, bam, Brother the Blade. Love that guy. And it's a really classy series. Check out Legion Tacticool. And he was wondering about that. He's like, oh yeah, I wish the choil was a little bigger. It's made for a pinky. And so I let him know, and he's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And that's what this is designed for. This isn't designed to be a camp knife. However, it truly is. This is your all-around do-anything knife. Look at Scab over at Choir Boys with the Z Cutlery Outdoors. His Preacher is used more than any single person's on the planet. Fact. So this right here, this is just a badass grip. And what I did is, because of the weight balance, right? When I measured out the mean for the weight, it's heavier here. So when you're talking about a fighting knife, if I went here, the weight is really thrown off. It's way too heavy this way. Now, it's a perfect balance. There's zero problems in the balance of this blade by doing that. So when I created this knife, I measured for the pinky to be up here and started my balance point from there in the reverse grip. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm pretty freaking smart. But that right there, just world-o difference. So this is a fighting knife, not a combat knife. This is something that you fight with. This isn't something that you're going to go to war with. Can you? Absolutely. Guys in the olden days, they took down woolly mammoths with pointed sticks. You don't think you could use this against something? Absolutely. But it's a fighting knife. Big, thick spine. What's that for? You can hold it in the reverse grip, 100% comfortable. This isn't going to go anywhere because you have a well. And so when I say you don't need guards, I still say you need something. And that's why whenever I design something, you'll never see me design a knife where the handle goes to the blade. I will never, ever design things like that without something that has it, unless it's a specific style. Like if I went with a kukri style grip, then the kukri style grip, it's just made for that. But what they do is there's a ridge right here that keeps the hand from going up. So if there's no guard on a kukri style grip on anything I design, and my OEF Defender is a kukri style grip, right? But the guard is actually in the center of the handle. Not the guard, but how you hold what keeps your hand there. And that's the difference. So So otherwise, you'll never see, if it's not a kukri style, you will never see me design a knife that doesn't have some kind of variance from this point to this point. There's going to be something always there. But so reverse grip, boom, I can use this to knock out another person's weapon. Somebody has a stick, boom, I'm going to break the stick. Somebody has a bat, I'm going to defend myself against a bat. And I would generally hold it in a reverse grip because I don't want to jack up my knife. You see a lot of that a long time ago in medieval times. They would use a reverse grip because they can shank the other weapon, take it out, and then go ahead and counter. So fighting knife, fighting knife, fighting knife, then combat knife. Combat knives. Again, you don't see a guard. You see protection right here, but you don't see a guard. This knife right here is well balanced, well purposed. The micarta grip on here, when your hands get wet, it's going to lock you in still. You do have a lanyard hole, but you can see the blade itself isn't going to be huge and wrapped around and no, it's just going to be designed for what it needs. So this is combat utility, which means it's going to be made for everything in the field. But if you get into it, this knife right here is going to be able to keep you alive mano a mano, and it's generally not going to be something that you use when another person has a weapon. If somebody attacks you and your rifle goes flying, or you run out of ammo and now all of a sudden it's hand-to-hand combat, you pull, you shank. That's what these are made for. So there's a huge difference between combat knives and fighting knives. Combat knives generally are smaller because they need to not just be easily carried, but if I have a giant knife and somebody's on top of me trying to pull it out of the sheath, I need all this extra room to get it out, to get that knife up there. Where this one, I could have it strapped right here, and boom, boom, right? Just boom, boom, real easy. So that's why generally on a combat knife, you're going to see sub 7 inches in a blade because you need to be able to get it out fast. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So now we're going to get into this guy right here. This is the Cold Steel Wild West Bowie, right? So obviously I did my own little stuff to it to give it that kind of Himonish look. But this thing is a big guard, right? And so guards back in the olden days when you're going out sword to sword and this and that, you're on a prairie and some guy is going to pull out a saber on a horse, and I just dropped maybe my pistol is a single shot pistol, or maybe I have a 5-shot revolver, and now I'm out of rounds, and oh crap, I lost my sword. You pull out your knife, and that way when somebody swings a sword, you can try to at least defend yourself without getting your hand cut off. That's what those were for way back then. Those don't do the same thing now. Now, does that mean it's completely useless? No, because if I had my hands like this and I swung and I didn't swing at the blade on somebody and I caught somebody with this point of the guard, that's gonna suck for that person 100%. If I have it in a reverse grip, however, now this sucks for me, right? This sucks. Even right here, if I do that, I can get stuck in my watch strap, and it's just a pain in the nuts. So with a guard nowadays, especially with the motions, and back in the cowboy days, everybody was straight up. They fought with knives for a living sometimes, and they knew to put the knife in front of the body. You always put the knife in front of you because you want to save your body from being hit. So anybody standing like this in a knife fight back then, where you're fighting against large knives, you're not gonna always get away. That would suck. Like, you'll notice a lot of the Native Americans, they carried smaller knives, right? They were sometimes bone and different things, but they were smaller and they didn't have guards on them. And you see a Native American guy fight like this because he wants to get in really close. But you don't want to get in really close if somebody pulls out this. You just don't want to. You don't want close, right? So guards on something like this, you don't really need a guard in a modern day type situation, because the chances of you pulling up to a guy and each pulling out something of equal stature is just not going to happen. I mean, just the knife fight alone nowadays, pretty much isn't going to happen. Nowadays, most knife fights are just some punk pulled a knife on somebody at an ATM, and it's not a knife fight, right? That's somebody fighting with a knife, or somebody fighting for their life from somebody with a knife. But so the guards nowadays, they really don't matter unless you're talking about, you see how there's barely any variance from here to here. A small guard, and with my Cisco one, I took off the big S guard, and what I did is I carved it into an oval about that big, and that's all the guard you need to keep your hand from slipping. So that's really good, and especially if you're using it for camp also, and you're stabbing down on something, you don't want your hand to slide, right? Because you're hitting something solid, not something movable. So the difference between combat and fighting knives are generally big. Combat knives are generally not. Combat knives generally come with the ability to attach to your combat gear. Fighting knives do not. Combat knives are generally not really crazy thick. Fighting knives sometimes just are, right? Unless you're talking about something that is just a stabber, right? This is a stabber slasher. This is not a fight another knife type knife. So there you go, the difference between a combat knife and a fighting knife. Now I want to do a video. I want to break out my top combat knives, maybe my top 3 somewhere in there. Maybe even I'll go to 5, I don't know. And then my top fighting knives. So I'll show you the difference between like my top fighting knives and my top combat knives. And one of my top fighting knives is going to abso-freaking-lutely surprise a lot of people because it's supposed to be a wall hanger. Oh, but it is not. It's an amazing fighting knife. So I'm going to have to get into that. Scab, Choir Boys Cutlery Outdoors. Speaking of him, Scab for the DBAD 10,000 giveaway, because my 10,000 is right around the corner. Scab is doing a giveaway for that event that's going to be awesome. You guys know what I'm doing. That bag is going to be, I got over 300 into it already, and there's going to be even more going in. But Scab is doing this. Whoever wins his 10,000 DBAD giveaway, he's allowing you to go to the Kukri House website and go to DBAD Creations on their website. You go to categories, DBAD Creations, and you'll see the 17. Right now there's 17. By then there might be 18 because the DBAD Mission 2, Rambo 2, is on its way to being finished. But you can pick any knife you want from the DBAD lineup, and Scab is going to get it to you. That's dope, man. So Scab is awesome. So what sucks about that, though, is his 10,000 isn't too far away. And that means I have to come up with something pretty badass and creative for his 10,000. And don't forget Joe, Steel Forge and Fire Sword and Knife. Love that guy. He just put out a really pretty sword, man. Completely worth checking out. Samurai Bird did too. Put out a really nice katana. His name is Samurai. So really worth checking out. All right, so that's it. The difference between a fighting knife and a combat knife. Two completely different knives. They're not the same. Just because you can fight with something doesn't mean it's all one package, right? All right, that's it. I am DBAD. Until next knife.